It's been about 2 years in the making, this exhibition. Much of this could not have been done without the help of Guy Peploe, S.J.'s grandson. Guy lives in Edinburgh, as did Peploe, his grandfather. What is or was a Scottish colourist? Why were they called the Scottish Colourists?
I think it's generally accepted that Dr. T.J. Honeyman, who was a curator and an art dealer, invented the term, and it was a useful term to catch the work of three artists, F.C.B. Cadell, George Leslie Hunter and Samuel John Peploe. And latterly, J.D. Ferguson. These were not landscape painters or portrait painters. These were artists whose commonality was in using strong colour in an individual way as a sort of statement of modernity, if you like. And this is something that distinguishes them from perhaps previous generations. Most people would see Peploe as a painter's painter, that people that understand paint, that have devoted their lives to painting, see his understanding of the medium of oil paint in particular as quite extraordinarily advanced. He understood the technical side brilliantly, and that allowed him, that gave him the freedom, if you like, to then go ahead and extemporize and experiment and become the creative genius I believe he was. It's that grounding in drawing and the technique of oil painting. When he moved to Paris in 1910, he was in the midst of extraordinary changes where experimentation was daily, where the exhibitions that he would have seen were the retrospectives of some of the post-impressions going on in Paris at that time, but also the Salons des Indépendants and Salon d'Automne, where the work of his contemporaries were being shown in Paris. And this was incredibly exciting, apart from anything else, and allowed him to maybe experiment, maybe a direction of experimentation that wouldn't have a conclusion. But it makes the work absolutely fascinating to understand from a contemporary viewpoint, in that furnace of modernism, which was represented by Paris before the First World War.
But he took all of those techniques and brought all of that wealth of knowledge back to Scotland and used it for the rest of his life in the wonderful paintings he produced here in Scotland.
He'd never stopped developing. But even within Iona, his subject was entirely solely the North End. Those rocks, those pinky-hued rocks and the sand, and Elan Nunray ahead, and view across the Burg and Malden, and so on. Quite geometrically and analytic paintings, and there's one or two in the exhibition. Within 4 or 5 years, his Iona subject was really entirely different. He was able to include things like rainbows, a squall coming in, and these were much more to do with atmosphere and weather, and the idea you could stand on the same spot and move your position by 5 degrees and find an entirely new painting, and that's without even the addition of the kind of random elements of weather, atmosphere. It's worth saying that one of his first sales of a picture was a still life to the Scottish Modern Arts Association, which had been set up to try to buy pictures which might form the nucleus of a collection of 20th century contemporary work for the nation. In painting still life, he was exercising the intellect. When he was responding to landscape, or the figure, it was perhaps more direct, more of an emotional response, because the composition of a still life becomes significant. It's what Roger Fry called significant form. This is something that Peploe would have been very familiar with, the ideas around aesthetics and the analysis of the real world in terms of its geometry. This is something that was brought to the painting of a still life, so that the composition becomes key, and the balancing, the elements of that, like colour and of course volume, shadow, the spatial awareness, these are the tools, if you like, of the painter.
Peploe came here regularly. He was drawn to Kirkcudbright by not the weather, so by what, Guy?
Many, many different subjects appealed to him. It became one of the most important places in his life as a painter. The town itself became a subject, and then some of the outlying hamlets and villages, and the architecture of Kirkcudbright, including the harbour and the castle and the toll booth, of course. These became significant subjects for him. And in Kirkcudbright, he was continuing as a colourist. So some of those, if you like, expressionist tendencies, chromatic transposition, using colours, pushing them from reality into something more expressive, which would have perhaps an emotional response for some people. This was what he was doing in some of these wartime Kirkcudbright paintings.
What have you got here?
Well, a couple of objects. This is a painting. And
I love that
one
painting.
Of the
it's extraordinary.
very few Edinburgh pictures. It's actually Edinburgh from Murrayfield.
Absolutely extraordinary.
You can see the castle and so on, and two figures in the foreground I like to think of as golfers, because it's Murrayfield Golf Course there. So it's his only golf painting. The point being that this is a painting on panel, on a little wood panel, like a cigar box lid, some people used to refer to them as. And it might have been, well, it would have been painted using one of these. This is a painting box, or a pochade, as the French call them.
Oh, of course.
And it closes up neatly, you can put it in a rucksack. On the underside, you've actually got a thumb strap.
Isn't that charming?
So potentially it could have been painted literally on the thumb, like this, you're painting, standing to paint.
And there is the panel.
There's a panel, that's your spare panels. You open it up and you have a palette in here, a little well for your turpentine and your paints, and that is where the actual panel that you're working on is pinned in. And
you'd literally be able to sit quickly and paint. And this is, of course, what is known as en plein air.
Yes.
And literally you paint what you see, you start and finish the painting there and then.
That could even have been this very box that he has on his lap when he's sitting with J.D. Ferguson on the beach at Paris Plage in 1907, that very famous, well-used photograph.